I will record in my computer just in case, so that we save it at least, and then we can share. This is full stack. Okay. So I did not check to see if how was the submissions, if everyone submitted or someone had some still working on it, some trouble submitting.
Yes, I didn't finish.
Okay. Well, you can submit also, I mean, what you have, but
Okay, thank you.
But yes, okay, we are doing okay. I think we have more or less people submitting. Okay, so let's see how we start today. Let me share my screen. Okay, so let's try to finish first like the most basic part, and then we will get to some more details, etc. So I have the full stack app open, and we have supposedly we have the backend already done. Let me just delete this. So let me just stop the server and the client. So here, this is the API.js file we have been working with. That is the backend. We had the routes, we had them done, we had them tested. So probably they work okay. And I'm going to keep this on the side because at some point, maybe we will need to compare to what we send back and what the server expects, or what the server sends us and what we expect. Okay. So this one with the get items. So we had also implemented this additional like helper function get items that sends back every time we do some action, selects all and sends back the result.data. So that means that we don't have to worry for an empty array if we delete, update, or post something, because even in these cases where the normal response will be empty, we again fetch everything and send back the data. And also check how we send result.data. So if here we console log result is an object that has two properties. One, the data array with all the data, and one, the error message. We had tested this, and we can check it again in Postman. Let's see how we check it. So okay, no, first I have to start the servers. So remember, we're working like with two servers in parallel. One is on the backend. So here I need to run npm start first to start this one, and then I'm cd to client. I'm changing to client directory, and here again also npm start to have this pop up for now. Okay, so the server is running, and let's see, to test, let's try to do a post. And so I'm going to do with a postman a post request to the server. Post API to do's. I have the text and complete. So right now, as the server is configured, if I do a post, it will refetch all data if everything goes well. Could not send request. I think maybe my port is not the 5002. Let me check my port number. It's 5001. Okay. Yes. Okay. So I'm getting back all the data, an array, but if I had it configured to send back the whole result part instead of just the data part. So here in the get items, let me go up here. So here I said result.data. Let's see what result in general looks like if I didn't get the result.data part. So the data I'm getting back from the server, it's first a data array. It's an object that has a data array with all the data. And it also has an error parameter with some error message if this exists. Okay, so it depends on how I have the server configured. If I send back result, then that means that I sent, actually what I sent, it's an object that includes an array. That it's the data array, right? So here on Postman, you can check it, or with some console log, the whole result object, it's an object that includes this data array. If I configure it to send back directly just the data part, by saying that what you send back to the frontend is result.data, then the frontend can expect that the result that it will get, it will be an array. So this is important because depends on what we send from the back, we need to know so that we treat it accordingly on the front. So what we have now is that we send just the data array on the back, and we can start building a bit our front end then. So I think this was the initial file that you had. So we have the basic React structure with a function, and we have two state variables defined, one for grabbing the input from the form and one for storing all our tasks. They initialized the input one is to an empty string, and the state it's an empty array. And then the first thing this code does, it's using the use effect so that it runs at the moment the page loads, and does a fetch to get all the to-dos. So the fetch is set for the API/to-dos. Since we don't specify any option, any other method, the default one is a get. So it does a get, it gets the first result, it translates it to JSON. And then here in this JSON, it's what the server has sent as data. So in here, I'm expecting to get back some kind of data array from the server. A data array from server. I can console log it just to see it. This will happen the first time that I load the page. And if I console log it, I'll see. So this is the array. It's an array of all the items I have. Okay, it's an array. See how it starts? It's so that we check a bit also the type of what we get. So this array, for now, we just console log it. What we want to do is actually to save it to our tasks array. So apart from console logging, we should use the setter function, set tasks, and add this JSON to our tasks variable. So now tasks should be an array that stores this data. If I console log it right here, I might not be able to see it immediately because this takes a bit, so it will complete after some other actions are also complete. So maybe here I will still see it as an empty array, but don't worry about it. So you see here the tasks seems that it's empty, although it has been initialized correctly with this. It takes a while to take effect. So if I just right after that console log it, then it seems that it's still empty. Okay, so now I have set the tasks to what I got from the server, and let's just show them here. I have a very simple form, and I'm going to add some other div to create a list of items. So to show these items, I need to map, and for each task, for each item, I'm going to call it task. For each task, I'm going to create a list item element with the task.text. So the data that I get back from the server, this array, all of them are objects that have an ID property, a text property, and a complete property. And I can use these properties. So a list item, task.text, and also add a key to its list item. That should be the task.id. And let's see if I can see them. And at least I can see them like this, like a list. Right now, there is not much interaction. Even if I write something here, also nothing is happening. The buttons are not yet configured, but at least I get the first fetch, the data from the server, and I can show them. Okay, so let's try to add an item. So make this form working. It's already kind of set up. So we have an input that on change we'll call the handle change function, and then we have an submit button that will trigger the submit of the form, and this will do the handle submit. So the input, remember in React, so I'm going to also set the type to text. We need to set the value to be reflecting the value of some state variable. In our case, we are gathering the value that the user will input in here. We have created here this state variable just to grab the input from the user. So we will be using this one that it's initialized to an empty array input. So that input from the form here, it's going to be stored and also reflect the changes on the input variable. And then on change, I want to update this input variable. So I'm going to take the eTarget value and set the input to this eTarget value with a handle change. Handle change is here. Set input, event target value, it's already created. So I'm getting the value and I'm updating the input. I can also console log it. Although if I console log it here, I'm not sure I can see it. Let's see. So yes, so submit doesn't do anything, but I should be able to show, maybe it's even better if I just show it somewhere right here. This will be more like immediate effect. So in here, I can put input, and like this, whenever I input something, I can see it appearing so that I know that I'm actually grabbing it and storing it correctly. So the new task that the user has entered, it's stored on the input. And then when we do the handle submit, I need to send this to the server. So the handle submit function here, first it prevents default, and then it should call the add task. So we already have this function here. And so when we want to submit, I'm calling add task. I can pass the input in here, or I don't really have to, because the input is like a state, a global variable. So the same function add task can also have access and can see directly the input. So I don't really need to pass it as a parameter here. So I can just call add task and complete this function to send the task, the new task back to the server. So this function, what it does is we have a fetch. This here is our options object. We can do it apart, like separately if we want in a variable, or we can just do it directly here. We do a fetch to the to-dos with the method post. We also need to specify the headers. And on the body, we need to put what we want to send to the server. So here, this was already created for you. It says input, so that you send back to the server an object that just has the input. So let's check quickly what the server expects on the post, because this will be connected to this function here from the server, so to the post function. And the server will be expecting a body that has a text and a complete property. Okay, because we will be extracting from the body the text and the complete true or false in order to insert it. So since we expect from the body to have these two properties, we have two options. Basically, either we change this in here. So instead of input, we need to send something called text, because this is what the server expects. And also something called complete, that I can also put always an initial value to false. I don't really need to get this as an input from the user, because I can assume that whenever it adds a to-do item, it's already not completed. So I can either construct like this, the object here, and send it so that when I send it, the server can find these two items that it will be searching. Or if I leave this as it was, so you may also change your server if you like, so that the server doesn't expect a complete and a text. It just expects an input from the body, because this is what you send from the front. And so then your insert query should be that on the text and on complete, the values that you will put is the one that came as input from the front. And here you can put it manually to false or to 0 or something else. So it depends on how you have your server, you create the front end, or the other way around. Since we already had the server tested and everything, I don't want to mess with it. So I'm going to leave it as it was. And instead, I'm going to modify the front end to send back what the server expects. So on the body part, there will be a text where we will put what the user has put as input that we have stored in this variable, and the complete that I'm going to set to false. So this will do the fetch, and we need to do the dot then to grab what the response will be. We get the response and we transform it to JSON, and then we get what comes back also from this transforming the data, and this data is the one that we now need to again store somewhere. So remember that in every post, the server will be sending back all data with this helper function we have created. So it will be setting like the whole updated array. So every time we will do a post, we need to get this new data and again set the tasks to data. So update also our data to reflect this. And I'm going to add the cuts as well. Error. For now, just console log error. Okay, this is similar to what we have in here. So for every fetch, we do the dot then, we get the response, we transform it to JSON, and then this you can call it JSON, you can call it data. This is a total name that you put, it doesn't have to be JSON. So it means that whatever I get back, then I can use it. So I can set the tasks and console log. So the rest, it's the same. Here also, here we don't do anything with a cut with an error message yet. We can simply console log it if we want, but we could treat the errors also a bit later better, so that the user also sees some error, because the console, the user never checks the console, so you need to show it somewhere on the page. Okay, so the add task should be done. We do the post, we send this input to the server, we get back the updated array, and then the updated array will automatically show. So let's try it. And if I click submit, then it is added to my array and I can see it here. I can also make that the form is cleaned every time after I do the submit. So another uncreated from the front. So it's sent to the server and it's updated. And in fact, now if I reload my page, I should be able to see these two things because they are persistent. They are kept on the database. so they are not lost if I reload. So let's put this cleaning of the form. So after I handle submit and everything, I set the input back to an empty string so that the form is clean for the next submission. Okay, so questions for this first part. Or what do you find more difficult on this, or challenging, or?
For me, everything is challenging, but that's me.
Did you start it? Did you do like some part, like the fetch, the initial fetch, the get, or the server? Because also you could maybe dedicate the time to complete the server and test it if you didn't have time to do the front end.
Yeah, to be honest, since I don't know, since we started to learn Fetch, I'm lost and I'm still with React, and I don't know, it's already a mess in my head. So this milestone is gonna be a funny one, but trying to do my best at least to do something. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's okay. You can try to do the milestone as you can, and then also spend some time, if you find some time during the weekend and during the next day, to fill in some of the gaps the next week, I mean, because on the next week, it will be a bit more relaxed in the sense that you will be working on your own project. So it's not that you have to deliver something, and you could, yes, just take the bits that you don't understand and try to review those. So let's
Anna,
see, yes.
could you write the task function also with the async await, just to make sure that, I mean, to have another sample?
Here.
Instead of the then catch, yeah.
Yes. So here, if we want to use the async await, so we need to specify that this task is an asynchronous. So the async goes here. When we use the arrow function, the async goes before the parentheses. And so instead of that, let me just put this in comment. We would let results await the fetch. So the rest, the fetch would be the same. So I'm going to copy this fetch. And then we need to also await, I'm going to call this data, await for the results to be transformed to a validation format. And then we could set tasks to data. And we will need to enclose this to a try catch to catch also any errors. So this would be try all this part. And then after the catch error, and again, some control log the error. Okay, let's try it. But we make sure that it works. And async task created. And let's have it also. Okay.
And it
Okay.
doesn't make a difference which one we use, right?
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. So it would make not much of a difference, but I mean, it doesn't make a difference, but it will complicate a bit if you had to do some other fetch inside, because then it would be a lot of nesting if you use the then, because maybe here at some point you would have to use this data to do some other fetch, like fetch from somewhere else based on the data. So you would have inside the then another fetch then, and this nesting is a bit hard to follow. And so, but if you just have one fetch, it's not any difference. Okay, so we have our items here, but we cannot do anything with them. So let's try to update one by doing something that will set it to complete. And let's say that this will be done that when I click the item, I change its status to complete. So maybe it's with the strike through. So okay. I don't know if the chat messages are something I need to worry about. So, okay. So for each task item, then I need to add some on-click action. So I go here to this each list item, and when I click this item, I want to update. Basically, I want to update its status to complete it. And then also do maybe some CSS to format it in one or the other. But for now, when I click, I need to call the update function for this item. So for this item, I need to call the update task and pass the task.id so that we need to know which item we need to update to send to the server which ID to update. This is the update task that gets the ID as an input and should get back all the data again. So let's do the fetch then. Update tasks from database. I'm going to copy this fetch from here. Already I get an indication that don't forget to set this to async. So in this case, we are going to do a fetch to an API. We are doing the update. So the route here, the API that we will worry about is this one, the put. It's the one that it's expecting also an ID on the URL. So I need to pass on the fetch URL the ID as well. And for this, I'm going to transform this string to the backtick format and pass the ID that I get as an argument. And the method is not going to be post, it's going to be put. And I don't really need to pass any data. So it depends on what I want this put to do. So if I want to update the whole thing, like a new text and a new, so get some other text, also correct this, then I also need to have a different form. I'm not going to do that. But let's say I just pass the same. I just pass complete to true as a data to the post. So what the body will get is that the complete is now changed to true. So I need to modify a bit what I had on the backend, because the backend I had it for the put to be able to accept like everything text the complete. In this case, I'm just going to get the complete, and I'm going to update the items to just set complete to this new value, to the true value. Okay, so I don't need to update the text. I just need to update its status. When I click it, I want it to be done complete, and then like to show as a strike through. So with this, and then I refetch the data. I don't really need to change anything else. I do the sending, I do the fetch, I get the data, and I update my tasks so that they show the new status. Right now, I don't see the status anywhere. I could actually put next to the text the status for starting. Task.complete, so that I can double check that when I click on an item, its status is changing. So this I clicked and the status changed to 1, and this one as well, so that I know that it works. If I click again, it doesn't happen anything, because I as I have it now, I always send to the server complete true. It's not that I send the opposite of the complete of the item. So here you are a bit of flexible to do what you want to do. If you want to have it like an on-off, then you need to do it in a different way. Instead of sending complete true, you can set the opposite of what the item complete status was. Or you could even simplify it even further. You don't send any header or any body. And then on the backend, whenever you get an instruction to update, that means that you just set the complete to the opposite of what it was. So I don't need any body in this, any body part in this case. It means that whenever I get a fetch instruction here, just update the status to the opposite of what it was. I think it's the one that we have seen also when I did the movie, the Ghibli movie app. I have done it like this. So like this, if I click it, it comes from 1 to 0, etc. So it updates from one to the other. This is up to you how you want to build the frontend or what functionality you want to build on the frontend. Then you accordingly build the backend to reflect this. Okay, let's make it a bit better. Instead of just showing task complete like this, we are going to add some conditional class here. So class name, and then the class name would depend on the text.complete. So if the text is complete, the class name should be completed, else nothing. I have created a completed class name. Check it here. That just has this line through decoration. So then, let me see. Text is not defined. Text is not defined. On app.js 96. Not text, task. Sorry, task complete. So the ones that are complete are showing as a strike through, and I can update them like this. So it looks a bit ugly for now, but at least at the beginning, try to have like the functionality to make sure that you can test it in an easy way, not get too lost on CSS and buttons and everything, and then you can add other things. So how was your complete update functions? Because I'm guessing that maybe you have done also different things to update. Or someone was trying just to Mele.
I did it slightly differently, but also had a question in terms of I'll copy what because I added the options. I'll be there. I also included a state variable is completed, but maybe that was just like duplicating.
So you have, okay, the options, the put method, the header, and the body. You said that complete to is completed. Then this is the normal fetch, and you set completed to the opposite. Okay, that's a good way. Also, it's a way to send to the server true or false. So then when you click it, you also update this state variable to be true or false, and then you get it from there. Does it work okay? Or you had
yeah, no, that it worked okay, because I find it complicated if you want to click on and then off and on and off. I found with that one it made more sense in my head. But do we need to pass an options here, or is that not necessary?
Here we already pass an option, it's just that we do it in line. So this small object, it's the options object. And if you don't pass anybody, you don't have to pass anybody, then you don't really need the header as well. But if you pass the body as you do in your case, then you also add the header part that specifies that the body will be in JSON format.
Okay.
But yes, we do need an options part when we do a put method, because we need to specify that the method is going to be put and not get. If we don't put any options, it will try to do a get.
Okay.
More questions for the update? So let's add also a button for deleting this task. And for this, I'm going to use these material icons to add like a small trash can. Let me see where I have this one. I'm just going to copy the icon. Not here. These were the icons. The favorite here, this one, material icons, delete. So I don't have to find it again. So I'm just going to put it next to its item. Right now it doesn't do anything. So in fact, when I click it, it kind of finds that I click on the Lee item. I should put it after the list item actually, because then I will have this mess. Then I'll try to click that one and it will click the other one. And I think I'm going to put everything inside a div. Because you see from the red line, you cannot map and pass two things. So I cannot pass one list item and one icon. And then in this case, if I want to put this inside a div, the key must go to the div. So it has to go to the root item that the map is creating. So in here. Okay, just that this icon is, I'm going to remove the list. Instead of list, I'm going to just use divs. So this one can be span and an icon next to it. That's the list. Okay, so if I click the item, it does this, but if I click the icon, it doesn't do anything for now. And I need to, same as I did for clicking on the text, I need to do for clicking on the icon. So this is my trash icon, and I need to connect this icon with an on click to call the delete task. Same as I did here, the task, just that in this case, I will delete the task. Delete task, and I again pass the ID. And then the delete task is very, very similar. I'm going to copy this again. I need to specify that the function is an asynchronous function. And the fetch is going to be again to API to do with a concrete ID. This is how my delete route here is done. So it's to do ID, and I'm passing an ID, but the method instead of put is delete. So when I get the request here, I get the ID from the parameters, I delete the item, and I send back with this helper function, I set back all the items. And so when I get back all the items, I'm updating my tasks, and then the item should have disappeared from my list of items. Okay, so when I delete this was done. And let me remove some of the testing ones that are a bit ugly. Okay, so even if I reload, the deleted item are not there because they have been deleted from the backend. And also I can like do as done, or maybe delete this one. So basically all the functionality is completed with these four actions, one for getting all the stuff, or one for adding, updating, and deleting. You see that the fetch is very similar in its case. You change some small part, but also depends if you want to do something more complex, like here on the update. If you wanted to update the text, then maybe you would also need to send somebody. And here we have some functions for adding and for updating and deleting. Okay, questions on this? Can try to make it a bit nicer. Container, and this one, text align. It should be text center. And I think I'm going to do this one. Last name. Line. These are some Bootstrap things that you can load. The button, you can also add some class so that it looks a bit nicer. Button primary. I have already the Bootstrap loaded. I'm going to leave some space also between the button and the form input. Margin left 2. And then for the items, I think there is some last name, order, zero shadow. I think we have done some of these when we did also the boxes, when we did the bank up, but I'm just copying them from some styling I have been working before. So it's not as easy. So it's not as quick when we do with CSS. You need to do a lot of tests, and I don't want to spend a lot of time now for doing tests. This is done with Bootstrap, but you can also try it with normal CSS. And then in this case, you load the things on the app.css. And okay, I think just one more for each div here. This is list group item, display flex, justify content.
Anna, sorry,
Yes.
where do you put Bootstrap? How I can use Bootstrap?
On the index HTML, I'll show you. Line item center. Let me see. Maybe some of them will not work now because I'm not sure I created all the divs. Well, okay, not bad. So you go on the client side. Here, I don't know if it's inside. On the client folder, on the public, and on the index HTML. It's what we did when we were just working with React. This is our React folder, in fact. And then you go on the index HTML, and here on the head part of that index HTML, you load the CDN. Of Bootstrap, here also is where I loaded the CDN for these material icons from Google. You can also load CDN for Font Awesome. If you want to use Font Awesome, this is another package with icons. There are also ways of loading Font Awesome directly on React. Install them as a package, like with npm install Font Awesome, and then you load them. You load them up here, and then you can use them in a slightly different format. So it depends on the family of icons you want to try. You can play a bit with these styles if you want. I'm sure that you will, all of you, do this later with your project so that they look nicer.
Okay, thank you.
And we also have a flash lecture on Bootstrap. So we will show a bit, so we will spend like an hour to show the basics of Bootstrap, although some of you have searched this by your own by now. And I could do this done and undone with some other way, so with some nice icon next to this as well. So to have like a checkbox that I, instead of strike through, I just check the box and then I put the click on this icon instead of put the click on when you click here. It wouldn't make any difference programmatically. It will just be a bit different as a style. Okay, so one thing, I think with this, we could say that, okay, I have the app done and everything. A couple of things just since we are at it to show you. So on the routes part, you can see, so we have this one here as well. No, I'm not going to touch this now. So I wanted to show you a couple of things on the server so that we know what we have. So this file, this server file was already created and there is a lot of information inside. We don't expect you to understand what everything is doing here. Just want to mention a couple of things. So in the server, this course part that you are seeing here that says use course, it's the one that allows us to do this connection also from the front end to the back end without any issues, because most of the times the browser has some limitations or some security limitations so that you cannot grab data from other servers, especially when you work with localhost. So our frontend is on the localhost 3000 and the backend is on the localhost 5002 or 5001 or 5000. And so it seems like it's a security issue if you try to grab something from some other localhost port. And so we use this course to allow this. If you search for course errors or headers, this cross origin resource sharing. So just because you may hear the course and so that you know what it is, these are some headers that are part of the HTTP protocol that ensures that only some content will come from some servers, or you allow from more servers, or you restrict. So here you can set up some security restrictions. And if we wouldn't use this, then we couldn't have this interaction between the two. So this is what this line basically does with this line. And then we have, in this file, we have quite some part, all this part that is for error handling. So for getting errors and for writing them in a nice format so that you see it on the console of the server. And so all these two functions here are for this error handling. This is for 404 errors when it finds some 404, so that you try to grab something that doesn't exist from the server, then it creates a 404 error and it passes it to this one. And this is our main handler for errors. That it writes the message in concrete format, it sets the status code, etc. You will not be expected to create this part yourself. In fact, when we will be like creating our projects from next week on, we will use a way to set up that will automatically create this structure. And so, but just because maybe you're curious and you would like to know each line of your code, what exactly it does. And then also the server can serve static files, and these files, they are defined here and here on the static part. So that means that right now all the files are served from the React part, but we could also have our server to serve different HTML files. So you could actually have a server with no React part, and you just put a simple HTML in it, and then same as you do a fetch localhost 5000/API, you could do localhost 5000/index.html, and then you get an HTML file from the server, or /todos HTML. And then, so the server doesn't have to be only for APIs, can also can have HTML files hosted and can send you HTML files. And here we can define where these HTML files will be stored, basically. So you can also have just a backend with some static HTMLs, or you can also have just the front end. And in fact, from next week on, you will be asked to choose. The best thing is to do a full stack project like this one, but you could choose that I want to just focus on the front end because right now it's too much back end, it's too messy for me. I just want to focus on the front end, and then you can do just the front end and use some external APIs and forget about the server. You could also do just the back end if you want, but I don't think anyone would choose that. Okay. And then another thing I wanted to mention is that here we are using fetch. This is the default thing to do the fetching, to grab things from an API. But there is also another package that is called Axios, which is very popular that you can use. And so I'm just mentioning this because if you are searching for some examples and you find code online, you may see Axios being used. And so that you know what Axios is, it's a replacement for fetch, basically. It works pretty similar with some small difference. It's more modern, but yes, it's not that much of a difference. So just if you see Axios in any code that you find, any example, that you remember that it is for a replacement for fetch, basically. Okay, what we didn't do is much of an error handling. So we could, if we want to do some error handling, remember we had some, when we did the first, with APIs, when we were working with APIs, and we had also the loading part. So we could have here some error variable that maybe a text, so that every time I have an error, instead of simply console log the error, which doesn't mean much for the user, I could set the error variable to this error that I get, to this error message. So in every errors that I have, in all cases, all these catch error, I'm setting the error to the error that I get. And then in my JSX part, in the template, I would need to have somewhere like a div to show this error. For now, I'm just going to put it like this. And I would like to show this conditionally if there is any error. So if I have an error, I will show this div, else I won't show anything. So something like this. In case there is some error, the user also gets to see something on the screen. Right now, I don't know how to test this because it could be like if I try to delete something with a wrong ID or something, to try to force this error. Or let's say if I change the fetch for a delete task to do. Okay, but I don't get the error here. Unexpected target. Error is not validation. 91. Here I said error. Okay, I need to put the same as I get from the cat. So error. That happens if some cases you use the error, in some cases you use error. So I need to change everything to error so that console log error. And here is error. And here I put everything as error. Not found. This should create a server error. So in order to test the errors right now, you need to like force it to have some error by maybe passing an ID that doesn't exist. Let's say here, if instead of that, I just pass like 233. Let me see if I try to do this, if I get any error. No, I think something on my JSX is not working. Objects are not valid as a React child. Okay. The error. Okay, because the error that I get from the server, so this error, it's an object. I should, and what I have set in my variable set error is just the text. I should get like should be like error message. Probably I need to check with the console log first, check what is the format of the error that you get from the server, because it may not be just the text. I think normally it's like an object that says error and the message, or message and the text message. And so let me try to store it like this. I will need to console log the error to make sure what is the correct format. No, not this one. Okay, at least I see the error here now. Unexpected head of JSON input. It doesn't mean much for the user. So this is because the server gave an error because I tried to delete something with an ID that did not exist. So I forced this error by putting this ID here. So also, another thing we should watch when we are dealing with errors is what we want the user to see and what it's not really important. So maybe I should just update all these errors and say something went wrong, or try again, or do some if to check what kind of error I got. If there was an error of like a miscommunication from the server, and then show one text like server did not respond. Or if I get an error because the ID was not found, so ID was not found, but the user needs to get some errors that means more things. So we cannot just simply console log the errors that we get as developers. So I cannot console log, I don't see any error now here to show you, but you know the errors that we get, right? On the server, we get all this huge text of some syntax error, blah, blah, blah. So the user doesn't need to see all this. So error handling is also a big part. We can start dealing with it slowly and see how we can get the correct message for the correct error code and show something valuable to the user. But this is just the first hint of how to at least show some errors on screen instead of simply console logging them. And that's it, I think, with the app. Any questions on that? I'm going to find the link for the milestone.
Well, if we wanted to have some like default task to show, but every time the page is reloaded, where would we put that? Because I understand that if it's in the MySQL, when it's deleted, it's also deleted. But if we want it every time, where exactly would we put it?
So that you wanted something, even if I delete all, so that at least there is something here showing. So because now I delete everything and doesn't show.
So like the user know a bit how it works.
So you could have one set here on the tasks, this tasks array. You could have like one default one with text, hello user, and complete false. And so this one will load always. should have a unique key prop. It's missing an ID, so I should put also an ID here. Zero. But so here you could put some default task to start, but then at the same time, at the moment that you run the page, the use effect fetches from the database. And so it replaces, basically here, it replaces this with the empty array that it gets from the database. So this will be erased then. You could have one showing also here, like outside of the map. So you can have this same div here with some data like key. I'm going to put 0, and then let me just eliminate some of this. So let's imagine that you cannot really click on that task. It's just always going to be there. And I can put something in here. So hello user, and I create like a same sample task that appears here. But this one doesn't really work. I could have it, but if it's not connected on the database, so this is just for showing something. And you could also do it so that it shows conditionally only when the array is empty. So only when your tasks array is empty, then it shows. Otherwise, it doesn't show, and you show the ones that you map from the tasks array. I don't know if you had this in mind, so something that to show like permanently on the front end, or something to load data on the database, like default data on the database automatically.
Yeah, something like that. Something like what we do on Vue, like on Mounted, that we put that. I mean, just so at the beginning it's not completely empty. And also, like, I don't understand, what if like two different users are using the same site? What one deleted, or since it's like in the database, the other one won't be able to see
so then
either?
in this case, you would have to have usernames, and so that you have a login process that the user logs in and sees its own table. So then you will have one tasks table per user. So you will have the task items connected also to a user ID, and just select all from the database where user ID is that one. And so then that you only show the ones that are from that user, and the user can only delete the ones that are his own or her own items. So then, yes, of course, this one now, everyone can have access and can add and delete stuff. But if you want to do it per user, then you need to also wrap it around some kind of, some user login process, authentication, basically. We will also see authentication examples later.
Okay, thank you.
So this is always here, even if I add something, this will remain. The rest are like clickable and you can delete, but this one doesn't work. So you could also add some text here, like I'm a sample to-do item, or you could simply hide it. You could do so that this item hides when your to-do list with some items. So I can put some conditional here, and if tasks length, it's bigger than 0. So no, if it is 0, so if I don't have any task lengths, if it is 0, so the opposite, else you show that part, basically. So now the other part has been erased because now I start having something on my database. But then at the moment I'm deleting everything, this sample item shows. Other questions? I'm going to copy this. Let's try to set up also this. I'm going to put this in resources. And let me stop my servers here. Okay, so let's try to clone this assignment, the full stack, the milestone. And see if we have any issues. 3, 15. This is pretty similar to the ones that we have seen. So there is a backend, there is a front end. You need to create some routes, and then you need to create the front end. And there are instructions. Again, there is a big README file. We can try to do this together now, so that if any issues come, we can solve them together. So as on the last time, we need to create a .env file to add our information of our database so that we can access this. And then there is a command that it's npm run migrate. This one replaces what we did with node/model/database. So I want also to show you this on the package.json. You can set up some execution script. So what will do this migrate command, what will be the equivalent to, what will call. So when we run npm run migrate, this will actually run what we were running so far on the previous application. So this node model database to just load, create the tables on our database. So you could either do it like this. We did this like this on the previous assignment manually. So we ran on the console node model database, or you can have some script inside the package.json to do this migrate, to call this migration file. This is called the migration file. It's the one that we use to initiate our database. Remember, it's here and it creates this table that is needed for this application, for this assignment. So I'm mentioning this because you will see this command. It's nothing different, so it's not really something weird. It's just that it's another way of running this same command that we would run either on the other case manually from the console. So we create our end file. First we create the database. So we need to follow these steps one by one. I don't want to confuse you now. So let's try to follow them step by step, because if we miss some or we do it in an opposite order, then it may not work. So, I mean, you cannot create a table before you create the database. So first of all, you need to create the database, set up the env, and do this. Let's try it. So let's try to set this up. I'm going to stop recording as well.